Imagine a truth so unsettling, so profoundly disruptive, that it had to be excised from the annals of history. A secret so potent it threatened to unravel the very fabric of faith as we know it. We are all familiar with the story of Peter, the impulsive fisherman who, in a moment of fear and weakness, denied his Lord 3 times before the rooster crowed. His betrayal, his subsequent remorse, and his eventual redemption form a cornerstone of Christian narrative, a testament to human fallibility and divine forgiveness. But what if the story we've been told is incomplete? What if, long before Peter's infamous denial, another, far more profound and deliberate negation took place? A denial not born of fear, but of a radical, almost terrifying understanding? A denial that, rather than being a moment of weakness, was an act of ultimate spiritual conviction, a profound rejection of the illusory world in favor of a deeper, hidden reality? This is not a tale of simple apostasy, but of a spiritual rebellion, a quiet revolution of the soul. It speaks to the heart of what it means to truly know, to truly see, beyond the veil of conventional belief. For centuries, the official narrative has cast a long shadow, obscuring figures and events that did not conform to its carefully constructed dogma. Among these forgotten narratives lies the whisper of an apostle, whose name, whose very existence, was systematically erased. He walked alongside Jesus, heard his words, witnessed his miracles, yet his path diverged in a way that history could not tolerate. His denial was not a fleeting moment of human frailty, but a conscious philosophical stand, a Gnostic affirmation that challenged the very nature of reality and the prevailing understanding of the divine. Consider the bustling streets of ancient Jerusalem, a vibrant tapestry of cultures, beliefs, and fervent expectations. In this crucible of spiritual ferment, Jesus of Nazareth emerged, a figure who captivated multitudes with his teachings of a kingdom not of this world. His words resonated with a profound spiritual authority, yet they were often cloaked in parables, riddles designed to conceal as much as they revealed. While many sought a political messiah, a liberator from Roman oppression, a select few, those with ears to hear and eyes to see, perceived a deeper, more esoteric message. Among these was our forgotten apostle, a man whose intellect was as sharp as his spirit was restless. He was not content with the superficial, the ritualistic, the dogmatic. He yearned for gnosis, for direct, experiential knowledge of the divine, a truth that could be felt in the very core of his being, not merely believed. This apostle, whose name we will uncover as our journey unfolds, was a seeker long before he encountered Jesus. He moved through the philosophical currents of his time, engaging with ideas that transcended the rigid boundaries of traditional Judaism. He understood that the material world, with its inherent suffering and impermanence, was not the ultimate reality. He intuited that there was a higher truth, a divine spark within humanity, yearning to break free from the shackles of earthly existence. When Jesus spoke of a Father who was not the vengeful deity of the Old Testament, but a benevolent, unknowable source of all light, it resonated deeply with this apostle's pre-existing spiritual framework. He recognized in Jesus not just a prophet, but a revealer of hidden truths, a guide to the inner awakening that promised liberation. His journey with Jesus was one of intense intellectual and spiritual engagement. He absorbed the parables, not as simple moral lessons, but as profound allegories for the soul's journey. He saw the kingdom of heaven not as a future earthly dominion, but as an inner state of being, accessible through gnosis. While others debated the literal meaning of Jesus' words, this apostle delved into their esoteric depths, understanding that the true message was often veiled, intended for those prepared to receive it. He witnessed the miracles, not as mere displays of power, but as symbolic acts demonstrating the Spirit's dominion over matter, a testament to the divine potential within each individual. Yet, a subtle tension began to emerge. As Jesus' ministry grew, so too did the expectations of his followers. Many clamored for a political Messiah, a king who would overthrow Roman rule and restore Israel to its former glory. The nascent movement, even in its earliest stages, showed signs of gravitating towards institutionalization, towards a rigid adherence to external forms and rituals. Our forgotten apostle, however, saw the inherent danger in this trajectory. He understood that true liberation lay not in external salvation, but in internal transformation. He saw that the very essence of Jesus' message, the direct, unmediated connection to the divine spark within, was at risk of being overshadowed by dogma and hierarchy. His denial, therefore, was not a sudden, impulsive act, but the culmination of a profound spiritual realization. It was a rejection of the emerging narrative that sought to confine the boundless truth of gnosis within the narrow confines of a nascent religion. He understood that to truly embrace the Christ within, one might have to deny the Christ without. The earthly Messiah, the political figure, the one who would become the cornerstone of an institutionalized faith. This was his first silent denial, a deeply personal and philosophical stand that set him apart from his fellow apostles. It was a denial of the world's illusions, a refusal to compromise the purity of his gnosis for the sake of conformity. This act, though unseen by the masses, was a pivotal moment, a testament to his unwavering commitment to a truth that transcended the mundane. It was a denial that would ultimately lead to his erasure from the historical record, a sacrifice made to preserve a deeper, more dangerous truth. The world into which Jesus and our forgotten apostle stepped was not merely a stage for divine intervention. It was a complex, multi-layered reality, steeped in ancient traditions and simmering with spiritual discontent. To truly grasp the profound nature of the forgotten apostle's denial, we must first understand the philosophical and theological landscape that shaped his worldview, a landscape far richer and more nuanced than the simplified narratives often presented. This was a world where the very nature of God, creation, and humanity's place within the cosmos was fiercely debated, not just in scholarly circles, but in the very fabric of daily life. At the heart of this intellectual ferment lay the burgeoning ideas that would later coalesce into what we now call Gnosticism. It was not a single monolithic religion, but a diverse tapestry of spiritual movements, united by a common thread, the pursuit of gnosis, a direct, intuitive knowledge of the divine. Unlike the prevailing religious currents that emphasized faith in external authority, adherence to laws, and the performance of rituals, Gnosticism posited that salvation came not through belief, but through understanding. It was a radical proposition, one that empowered the individual to seek truth within, rather than relying on intermediaries or prescribed doctrines. For the Gnostics, the material world, with all its imperfections, suffering, and transience, was not the perfect creation of an all-good, all-powerful God. Instead, it was seen as a flawed, even malevolent construct, a prison for the divine spark within humanity. This world, they believed, was the handiwork of a lesser deity, often referred to as the demiurge. This figure, sometimes depicted as ignorant, sometimes as malicious, was distinct from the true, transcendent God, the ultimate source of all being, often called the Pleroma, or the unknown God. The demiurge, in its arrogance, believed itself to be the sole creator, unaware of the higher spiritual realms from which it had unwittingly drawn its power. This concept of the demiurge was a central pillar of the Gnostic worldview, and it profoundly influenced our forgotten apostle. He saw the world around him, the world of suffering, injustice, and illusion, as evidence of this flawed creation. He recognized the limitations of the physical senses, the deceptive nature of appearances, and the pervasive influence of ignorance that kept humanity enslaved to its material existence. His spiritual journey was a relentless quest to pierce through this veil of illusion, to awaken the divine spark within himself, and to reconnect with the true source of light, the Pleroma, beyond the Demiurge's dominion. When Jesus appeared, his teachings, particularly those delivered in parables and esoteric discourses, resonated deeply with this Gnostic understanding. Jesus, for the forgotten apostle, was not merely a historical figure, but a divine emissary from the Pleroma, a revealer of Gnosis. He was the light that had descended into the darkness of the material world, not to establish a new earthly kingdom, or to fulfill political prophecies, but to awaken humanity to its true spiritual heritage. His miracles were not just acts of power, but symbolic demonstrations of the Spirit's ability to transcend the limitations of the Demiurge's creation. His parables, often dismissed as simple stories for the masses, were, for the Gnostic mind, profound allegories containing hidden keys to spiritual liberation. Consider the parable of the sower. While conventionally interpreted as the spreading of the Word of God, for the Gnostic, it spoke of the divine seeds of Gnosis scattered across the barren soil of the material world, some taking root, others choked by the weeds of ignorance and worldly attachments. The treasure hidden in a field was not earthly wealth, but the invaluable Gnosis concealed within the individual, waiting to be discovered through diligent inner work. These were not mere metaphors. They were blueprints for spiritual awakening, understood by those who possessed the inner sight to decipher their true meaning. His profound understanding of Jesus' mission created an inherent tension between the forgotten apostle and many of his peers. While others focused on the external aspects of Jesus' ministry, his healing, his preaching to the crowds, his role as a political or religious leader, our apostle was drawn to the inner, transformative power of his teachings. He saw the dangers of externalizing salvation, of reducing the profound spiritual journey to a set of rules, rituals, or historical events. He understood that true liberation was an internal process, a radical shift in consciousness that could not be legislated or institutionalized. This divergence in understanding became the central conflict of his journey. He witnessed the nascent Christian movement, even in its earliest days, beginning to solidify into a structured religion, complete with hierarchies, dogmas, and an emphasis on external adherence. He saw the profound, liberating message of Gnosis being slowly eclipsed by a focus on sin, redemption through sacrifice, and obedience to a seemingly external God. This was the true battleground for his soul, the tension between the boundless freedom of inner knowledge and the comforting, yet ultimately limiting, embrace of organized belief. His eventual denial, therefore, was not a simple act of betrayal, but a profound philosophical statement, a rejection of the Demiurge's world and its earthly constructs in favor of the transcendent truth revealed by the Christ of Gnosis. The stage was set, not just for a clash of personalities, but for a profound ideological battle that would shape the future of spiritual thought. Our forgotten apostle, deeply immersed in the esoteric teachings of Jesus, found himself increasingly at odds with the burgeoning mainstream interpretation of the Master's message. This was the central conflict, a mystery woven into the very fabric of early Christianity. How could a message of radical spiritual freedom become, almost overnight, a system of rigid dogma and external authority? What hidden forces were at play? And what profound dilemma did this present to those who truly understood the deeper meaning of Gnosis? The dilemma was stark. If salvation came through direct, inner knowledge, through the awakening of the divine spark within, then what need was there for intermediaries, for priests, for rituals, for a hierarchical church structure? If the true God was the transcendent Pleroma, beyond the reach of the Demiurge, then what was the significance of a Messiah who suffered and died in the material world? These were not mere academic questions. They were existential challenges that threatened the very foundation of the emerging Christian narrative. And our forgotten apostle, with his penetrating intellect and unwavering commitment to gnosis, was uniquely positioned to confront them. He witnessed the subtle, yet inexorable shift. The emphasis began to move from the inner Christ, the universal principle of divine consciousness, to the outer Jesus, a historical figure whose suffering and sacrifice became the sole path to redemption. The radical message of self-divinization, of humanity's inherent divinity, was slowly being replaced by a doctrine of original sin and the need for external atonement. This was, for the forgotten apostle, the true betrayal, not a betrayal of a man, but a betrayal of the divine truth itself. Consider the Last Supper, a pivotal moment in the canonical narrative. For most, it represents the institution of the Eucharist, a literal communion with the body and blood of Christ, a ritual that would become central to Christian worship. But for our forgotten apostle, observing the proceedings with a discerning eye, it was a profound symbolic act, a teaching on the nature of gnosis. The bread and wine were not merely physical elements. They were metaphors for the spiritual nourishment derived from understanding the true nature of the Christ, the wisdom that feeds the soul and awakens the divine spark. He saw the others, including Peter, clinging to the literal, missing the deeper, esoteric meaning. This was not a criticism, but a recognition of the profound chasm opening between those who sought faith and those who sought knowledge. His understanding of Judas's role also diverged radically from the conventional view. In the official narrative, Judas is the ultimate betrayer, driven by greed, a figure of pure evil. But in certain Gnostic texts, Judas is portrayed not as a villain, but as an instrument of divine will, a necessary catalyst for Jesus' mission. He is the one who truly understands Jesus' desire to shed the physical body, to escape the confines of the material world, and to return to the pleroma. His act of betrayal is, in this light, an act of profound spiritual insight, a necessary step in the unfolding of the divine plan. This alternative interpretation of Judas's actions further illuminates the forgotten apostle's unique perspective, suggesting a shared understanding of the esoteric nature of Jesus' mission. The central mystery, then, is not merely who this forgotten apostle was, but why his profound understanding, his radical gnosis, was deemed so dangerous that it had to be systematically erased. What was it about his particular denial that posed such a threat to the nascent church? It was not the denial of a man, but the denial of a system. He denied the authority of the demiurge, the creator of the flawed material world. He denied the necessity of external intermediaries for salvation. He denied the very concept of a God who demanded sacrifice and obedience over knowledge and inner transformation. His denial was a direct challenge to the power structures that were rapidly consolidating around the figure of Jesus. This challenge manifested in subtle ways. While other apostles focused on building communities, establishing doctrines, and converting the masses, our forgotten apostle was drawn to the solitary path of inner contemplation, to the direct experience of the divine. He understood that the true kingdom of God was within, not an earthly dominion to be established through political or religious conquest. This emphasis on individual gnosis is inherently subversive to any institution seeking to control access to the divine. It empowered the individual, making them their own priest, their own temple, their own path to salvation. The conflict deepened as the early Christian movement began to define itself against other spiritual currents. The Gnostics, with their diverse interpretations and their emphasis on personal revelation, were seen as a threat to unity and orthodoxy. The very concept of a universal, accessible gnosis was antithetical to the idea of a select few holding the keys to salvation. The forgotten apostle, by embodying this radical freedom, became a living testament to the very truths the emerging church sought to suppress. His existence, his unique understanding, and his quiet defiance were a constant, unspoken challenge to the authority that was rapidly being consolidated. His denial, therefore, was not merely a personal act, but a symbolic rejection of the path that would lead to the institutionalization of faith, a path he knew would ultimately obscure the very gnosis Jesus had come to reveal. This was the true betrayal he witnessed, and it compelled him to make a choice that would forever alter his place in history, pushing him into the shadows, but preserving the essence of a truth too profound for the world to yet fully grasp. The silence surrounding our forgotten apostle is not an absence of evidence, but rather a testament to the deliberate efforts to suppress a narrative that challenged the very foundations of emerging orthodoxy. For centuries, the official story, meticulously crafted and fiercely guarded, relegated alternative interpretations to the realm of heresy. Yet the echoes of a different truth persist, whispering from ancient texts, subtle symbolism, and the very structure of Gnostic thought. To uncover the forgotten apostle's story, we must become spiritual archaeologists, sifting through the layers of dogma to find the hidden gems of gnosis. The most compelling evidence for a narrative, beyond the canonical Gospels, lies in the vast collection of texts known as the Nag Hammadi Library. Discovered in 1945 in Upper Egypt, these 13 ancient codices, buried for over 1,600 years, contain over 50 Gnostic scriptures. These are not mere curiosities. They are direct windows into the spiritual landscape of early Christianity, revealing a vibrant diversity of beliefs that were systematically excluded from the official canon. Among these texts, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, and the Gospel of Mary offer profound insights into a form of Christianity that prioritized inner knowledge over external ritual, a perspective that aligns perfectly with the worldview of our forgotten apostle. The Gospel of Thomas, for instance, presents Jesus not as a divine sacrifice, but as a wisdom teacher, a revealer of hidden truths. Its sayings emphasize the kingdom of God as an internal reality, accessible through self-knowledge. If you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not have that within you, what you do not have within you will kill you. This radical emphasis on inner transformation, on the inherent divinity within each individual, stands in stark contrast to the doctrines of original sin and external salvation that came to dominate mainstream Christianity. This was the very essence of the gnosis that our forgotten apostle embraced, a truth so liberating it threatened the power structures of any burgeoning institution. Consider also the symbolic language embedded within the canonical Gospels themselves, often overlooked in literal interpretations. The repeated emphasis on seeing and hearing with spiritual understanding, the parables that conceal as much as they reveal, the enigmatic pronouncements of Jesus. These elements, when viewed through a Gnostic lens, take on new and profound meanings. The blindness of the Pharisees, for example, is not merely a physical ailment, but a spiritual inability to perceive the deeper truths of gnosis. The light of the world is not just a metaphor for moral guidance, but a direct reference to the divine spark, the pneuma, trapped within the material body, yearning for liberation. The very act of Peter's denial, so central to the official narrative, can be reinterpreted through a Gnostic framework. While presented as a moment of human weakness, it also serves to highlight the contrast between Peter's impulsive, earthly understanding and the deeper, more philosophical denial of our forgotten apostle. Peter denied the man, the historical figure, out of fear for his own life. Our forgotten apostle, however, denied the illusory world, the demiurge's creation, and the emerging institutionalization of faith out of a profound commitment to a higher truth. His denial was not a failure of courage, but an act of spiritual discernment, a refusal to compromise his gnosis. Furthermore, the absence of our forgotten apostle from the historical record is, in itself, a form of evidence. History, particularly religious history, is often written by the victors, by those who successfully established their doctrines as orthodox. Any dissenting voices, any alternative interpretations, were systematically marginalized, their texts destroyed, their followers persecuted. The very act of erasure speaks volumes, suggesting that the forgotten apostle's message was so potent, so disruptive, that it could not be allowed to coexist with the official narrative. His disappearance was not accidental. It was a deliberate act of suppression, a testament to the power of the truth he embodied. Ancient philosophical currents also provide a rich interpretive framework. The influence of Platonic thought, with its distinction between the world of forms, true reality, and the world of appearances, illusion, resonates deeply with Gnostic cosmology. The idea of a transcendent, perfect realm beyond the imperfect. Material world was a concept that would have been familiar to educated individuals of the time, including our forgotten apostle. This philosophical backdrop allowed him to interpret Jesus' teachings not as a call to earthly reform, but as a revelation of the true nature of reality and the path to spiritual liberation from the confines of the material realm. Symbolism, too, offers tantalizing clues. The serpent, often demonized in Orthodox Christianity, holds a revered place in some Gnostic traditions as a symbol of knowledge and wisdom, the bringer of gnosis. The story of Adam and Eve, when reinterpreted, becomes a narrative of awakening, where the serpent encouraged humanity to seek knowledge and challenge the dictates of the demiurge. This inversion of traditional symbolism points to a radical re-evaluation of biblical narratives, a re-evaluation that our forgotten apostle would have embraced, seeing beyond the literal to the esoteric truths concealed within. The very concept of a secret teaching or inner circle within Jesus' disciples, hinted at even in the canonical Gospels, lends credence to the idea of a deeper, more esoteric layer of instruction. Jesus often spoke in parables to the multitudes, but offered clearer explanations to his disciples in private. It is within this inner circle that our forgotten apostle would have thrived, absorbing the profound gnosis that was not intended for the uninitiated. His unique understanding, therefore, was not an aberration, but a direct consequence of his privileged access to these deeper teachings, teachings that were later deemed too dangerous for the broader populace. Thus, the story of the forgotten apostle is not a mere speculation, but a reconstruction based on the fragments of truth that survived the relentless march of orthodoxy. It is a narrative supported by the very texts that were once condemned, by the philosophical currents that shaped early Christian thought, and by the subtle symbolism embedded within the stories we thought we knew. His denial, far from being a mark of shame, becomes a beacon of profound spiritual insight, a testament to the enduring power of gnosis to challenge, to transform, and to reveal the hidden truths that lie beneath the surface of history. The stage is now set for the twists and turns that will further illuminate his extraordinary journey. The journey into the forgotten apostle's story is not a linear path, but a labyrinth of hidden passages and unexpected revelations. Just as the Gnostics believed that true knowledge often lies concealed beneath layers of illusion, so too does the truth of this apostle's fate emerge from the shadows of history through startling twists and profound turning points. We have explored the philosophical landscape that shaped his unique perspective, the Gnostic dilemma that placed him at odds with the emerging church, and the subtle echoes of his existence in ancient texts. Now prepare for the unveiling of truths that will challenge your very understanding of faith, betrayal, and the nature of divine revelation. One of the most significant turning points in our narrative revolves around the very act of denial. We have been conditioned to view denial as a weakness, a failure of conviction. But what if, for our forgotten apostle, his denial of Jesus was not a moment of cowardice, but an act of profound spiritual courage? Imagine the scene, not a frantic, fear-driven disavowal in a courtyard, but a quiet, internal renunciation of the earthly, the material, the illusory, This was not a denial of the Christ, the divine principle, but a denial of the historical Jesus as the sole external path to salvation. This subtle yet radical distinction is the first major twist, transforming an act of perceived treachery into one of ultimate fidelity to gnosis. Consider the implications of this perspective. If the true Christ is the inner light, the divine spark within each individual, then the external historical figure of Jesus, while a profound revealer of this truth, is not the end goal. To cling solely to the historical Jesus, to worship the outer form, would be to miss the deeper message, to remain trapped in the demiurge's material realm. Our forgotten apostle understood this. His denial was a symbolic act of liberation, a severing of ties with the external world and its false authorities, in order to fully embrace the inner, transcendent reality. This was a turning point, not just for him, but for the very concept of spiritual liberation. Not another startling revelation emerges when we consider the fate of the apostles themselves. While Peter, Paul, and others went on to establish the early church, spreading the message of a crucified and resurrected Savior, our forgotten apostle chose a different path. His disappearance from the historical record, once seen as a sign of his failure or insignificance, now reveals itself as a deliberate act of preservation. He understood that the gnosis he possessed, the profound truths revealed by Jesus, were too precious, too subversive, to be exposed to the nascent institutionalization of faith. He chose to go underground, to become a silent guardian of the esoteric teachings, ensuring their survival for future generations, rather than seeing them diluted or corrupted by the demands of a burgeoning religion. This is a pivotal twist. His disappearance was not an accident, but a strategic retreat. He became a living repository of forbidden knowledge, a silent witness to the true nature of Jesus' mission. He understood that the very act of establishing an organized religion, with its dogmas, rituals, and hierarchies, would inevitably obscure the radical freedom of gnosis. His choice to vanish was an act of profound foresight, a sacrifice of personal recognition for the sake of preserving the purity of the divine message. He became the unseen hand, the whispered legend, the one who kept the flame of true knowledge alive in the darkest hours of orthodoxy. The narrative takes another unexpected turn when we delve into the nature of betrayal itself. In the Gnostic view, betrayal is often not what it seems. Judas, for instance, is reinterpreted in some Gnostic texts not as a villain, but as the most enlightened of the disciples, the one who truly understood Jesus' desire to shed his material body and return to the pleroma. His act of handing Jesus over was, in this light, a necessary catalyst for the divine plan, a profound act of obedience to a higher truth. If Judas's betrayal can be re-evaluated, then what of our forgotten apostles' denial? It ceases to be a mark of shame and transforms into an act of profound spiritual insight, a conscious choice to align with the transcendent rather than the temporal. This re-evaluation of betrayal forces us to question all conventional narratives. It suggests that the official story, with its clear-cut heroes and villains, is a simplification, a distortion of a far more complex spiritual reality. The true betrayal, from a Gnostic perspective, was the suppression of gnosis, the deliberate obscuring of humanity's inherent divinity, and the imposition of external authority over inner truth. Our forgotten apostle, by his very existence and his profound act of denial, stands as a silent protest against this betrayal, a beacon of the true path to liberation. Furthermore, the twists extend to the very identity of this forgotten apostle. While the canonical Gospels focus on a select few, Gnostic texts introduce us to a wider circle of disciples, many of whom held unique and profound understandings of Jesus' teachings. Could our forgotten apostle be one of these figures, perhaps? A disciple whose name was deliberately omitted, or whose story was subtly altered to fit the emerging Orthodox narrative. The possibilities are tantalizing, hinting at a richer, more diverse tapestry of early Christian thought than we have ever been led to believe. This journey through the twists and turning points of the forgotten apostles' story is not merely an academic exercise. It is a profound spiritual inquiry. It challenges us to look beyond the surface, to question the narratives we have inherited, and to seek the deeper truths that lie hidden beneath layers of dogma and historical revisionism. It is an invitation to embrace the radical freedom of gnosis, to recognize the divine spark within ourselves, and to embark on our own journey of spiritual liberation. The revelations we have uncovered thus far are merely a prelude to the climax, where the full implications of this forgotten truth will be laid bare, forcing us to reflect on the very nature of our own faith and understanding. The journey through the forgotten apostles' story culminates in a profound climax, a moment of spiritual revelation that transcends the boundaries of historical narrative and delves into the very essence of Gnostic truth. We have navigated the intricate landscape of ancient beliefs, uncovered the subtle nuances of his unique denial, and witnessed the surprising twists that redefine our understanding of betrayal and preservation. Now, we arrive at the precipice of ultimate insight, where the full implications of his forgotten existence are laid bare, forcing us to reflect on the broader spiritual and historical ramifications of his profound gnosis. The climax of this narrative is not a single event, but a convergence of understanding, a moment when the scattered fragments of truth coalesce into a coherent, transformative vision. It is the realization that the forgotten apostles' denial was not merely a personal act, but a symbolic representation of humanity's struggle to break free from the illusions of the material world, to deny the authority of the demiurge, and to embrace the true, transcendent God. His story becomes a microcosm of the Gnostic journey itself, a radical rejection of the false reality in pursuit of authentic spiritual liberation. Imagine the weight of this realization on his shoulders. He walked among his peers, witnessing their fervent belief in an external savior, their longing for an earthly kingdom, their adherence to rituals and laws that, to him, seemed to obscure the very truth Jesus had come to reveal. He saw the nascent church, in its earnest desire for order and unity, inadvertently building new prisons for the spirit, replacing one set of chains with another. His internal conflict reached its zenith. How could he reconcile his profound gnosis with the burgeoning orthodoxy that threatened to engulf it? His climax was a silent internal crucifixion. He chose to deny the world, to deny the expectations of his peers, to deny the very recognition that would have cemented his place in history. This was not a passive retreat, but an active, conscious decision to embrace obscurity, to become a living testament to the truth that the true path to salvation lay within, not without. He understood that the externalization of faith, the reliance on intermediaries and institutions, would ultimately lead to spiritual stagnation. His denial was a radical act of self-sovereignty, a declaration that the divine spark within was sufficient, requiring no external validation or mediation. This profound choice had immense historical implications. By stepping out of the spotlight, by allowing his story to be erased, he inadvertently created a void that the emerging church was quick to fill with its own narrative. Peter's denial, a moment of human weakness and subsequent repentance, became the perfect counterpoint, a story that reinforced the themes of forgiveness and redemption through adherence to the nascent institution. The forgotten apostles' denial, however, offered no such comfort. It was a challenge, a provocation, a testament to a truth too dangerous for the masses, a truth that demanded individual responsibility and inner awakening. The reflection on this climax forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of power, control, and the construction of religious narratives. Who benefits from the suppression of certain truths? What is lost when diverse spiritual interpretations are homogenized into a single authoritative dogma? The story of the forgotten apostle serves as a powerful reminder that history is often written by the victors, and that the voices of dissent, particularly those that challenge established power structures, are often silenced or distorted. Yet, his silence was not an end, but a beginning. His disappearance was a strategic act of preservation. He became the unseen guardian of Gnosis, ensuring that the esoteric teachings, the true essence of Jesus' message, would not be lost entirely. He understood that the seeds of truth, once planted, would eventually find fertile ground, even if it took centuries for them to sprout. The discovery of the Nag Hammadi texts, millennia later, is the ultimate vindication of his foresight, a testament to the enduring power of truth to emerge from the shadows. His climax, therefore, is also our own. It is the moment when we, as seekers of truth, are invited to deny the conventional, to question the accepted, and to embark on our own journey of inner discovery. It is a call to recognize the divine spark within ourselves, to cultivate our own gnosis, and to liberate ourselves from the external authorities that seek to define our spiritual path. The forgotten apostle's story is a mirror, reflecting our own potential for radical spiritual freedom, our own capacity to deny the illusions of the world and embrace the authentic reality of the divine. This reflection extends to the very concept of salvation. If salvation is achieved through gnosis, through direct knowledge of the divine within, then the traditional notions of sin, sacrifice, and external redemption take on a different meaning. The forgotten apostle's life and his ultimate denial suggest that true salvation is not about being saved from something, but about being awakened to something, to our inherent divinity, to our connection to the pleroma, to the boundless light that resides within. This is the profound spiritual implication of his story, a message that resonates with timeless wisdom and offers a path to liberation that transcends the confines of any single religion or dogma. His legacy is not found in stained glass windows or hallowed texts, but in the enduring whisper of gnosis that continues to inspire seekers across generations. He is the archetype of the spiritual rebel, the one who dares to see beyond the veil, to question the unquestionable, and to choose a path of inner truth, even if it leads to obscurity. His climax was a triumph of spirit over form, of knowledge over dogma, of inner light over outer darkness. And as we reflect on his journey, we are invited to embark on our own, to find our own moment of Gnostic climax, and to embrace the profound freedom that comes with denying the illusions and affirming the divine within. The stage is now set for the powerful conclusion, where the full implications of his forgotten truth will be fully revealed. The journey through the life and profound denial of the forgotten apostle culminates not in a definitive answer, but in a powerful, lingering question that resonates through the corridors of time. We have peeled back the layers of historical revisionism, delved into the esoteric depths of Gnostic thought, and witnessed a spiritual drama that challenges the very foundations of conventional belief. Now, as our exploration draws to a close, we are left with the enduring echo of his existence, a testament to the timeless struggle between outer authority and inner truth, between dogma and gnosis. His story, once meticulously erased, now stands as a beacon, illuminating the path for those who seek a deeper understanding of the divine. It is a narrative that transcends the confines of ancient history, speaking directly to the spiritual hunger of our modern age. In a world often characterized by superficiality and external validation, the forgotten apostle's radical commitment to inner knowledge offers a profound alternative, a call to awaken the divine spark within and to embrace the authentic reality of our being. Consider the legacy he left behind, not in grand cathedrals or hallowed texts, but in the subtle currents of mystical thought that have persisted throughout history. His influence, though unacknowledged by official narratives, can be traced in the whispers of Hermetic traditions, the esoteric teachings of various secret societies, and the perennial philosophy that recognizes the unity of all spiritual paths. He became an archetype, the silent guardian of forbidden knowledge, a symbol for all those who dared to question, to seek, and to find truth beyond the confines of established systems. His denial, once a mark of shame, is now revealed as an act of profound spiritual integrity. It was a rejection of the illusory world, a refusal to compromise the purity of his gnosis for the sake of conformity. He understood that true liberation lay not in external salvation, but in the radical transformation of consciousness, a journey inward to discover the divine within. This was his ultimate gift to humanity, a living example of what it means to be truly free, unbound by the chains of dogma and the dictates of external authority. The implications of his story are vast and far-reaching. It forces us to re-examine the very nature of faith itself. Is faith merely a blind adherence to doctrine, or is it a courageous leap into the unknown, a trust in the inner wisdom that guides us towards gnosis? The Forgotten Apostle's life suggests that true faith is not about believing in something external, but about knowing something internal, a direct, experiential understanding of the divine that transcends all intellectual constructs. Furthermore, his narrative compels us to question the construction of history, particularly religious history. Who writes the narratives, and whose voices are silenced? What truths are deemed too dangerous, too subversive, to be allowed into the mainstream? The story of the Forgotten Apostle serves as a powerful reminder that the official record is often incomplete, a carefully curated version of events designed to serve specific agendas. It encourages us to become critical thinkers, to seek out alternative perspectives, and to listen for the whispers of truth that have been deliberately suppressed. His disappearance from history was not an act of failure, but a profound act of foresight. He understood that the gnosis he embodied could not thrive in an environment of rigid dogma and institutional control. By retreating into the shadows, he ensured that the flame of true knowledge would not be extinguished, but would continue to burn, albeit dimly, until a time when humanity was ready to receive its light. The rediscovery of Gnostic texts in the modern era is a testament to his enduring legacy, a validation of his profound wisdom and his unwavering commitment to truth. As we conclude this journey, we are left with a sense of awe and wonder at the resilience of truth. The Forgotten Apostle, though erased from the official record, lives on in the hearts and minds of those who continue to seek gnosis. His story is a powerful invitation to embark on our own spiritual adventure, to question the narratives that bind us, and to discover the profound, liberating truth that resides within our own being. It is a call to deny the illusions of the world, to embrace the divine spark, and to become, in our own way, a forgotten apostle, a silent guardian of the truth that transcends all time and space. His legacy is not a relic of the past, but a living, breathing inspiration for the future. It is a reminder that the path to true spiritual liberation is often solitary, challenging, and requires a profound courage to defy conventional wisdom. But the rewards, the profound gnosis that awaits, are immeasurable. The Forgotten Apostle's story is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to seek, to question, and ultimately to find its way back to the divine source. And as we close this chapter, we are left with the profound realization that the greatest truths are often found not in the loudest pronouncements, but in the quietest whispers, in the enduring echo of the forgotten.